it's taken me a while, but turns out that this might just be my forever home and a project I will be working on for a very, very long time. This cottage was originally inspired by Frozen, and as I was building it, I realized I just really want to keep going because this is very, very much my style. So I just wanted to give you a little tour of what I've made so far and talk a little bit about what I want to do with it in the future. So the very first thing you'll see when you walk into the cottage is this beautiful archway that leads to the dining room, and it has a lot of painted details. So Frozen was of course inspired heavily by Norway's culture and architecture, and one of the things that you see a lot in their interiors is this thing called rose painting, and that is what I attempted to do on a lot of the trims that you see. I mostly ended up using the elegant style furniture that you can buy from the neighborhood vendors, but I will be posting a speed build of this build so you can see how I did it. And if you look back to the doorway where we came in from, you can see some little details that are references to Frozen. For example, the carrots in the basket and the little saddle for Sven. So one thing that I've noticed now that I've been building things for movies or series is that the backgrounds are usually very minimalistic. So for example in Frozen 2, when they're having their little game night inside the castle, you don't see a whole lot of details in the room. So the background is very clean. It doesn't have that many items there. There's like bookshelves and stuff, but yeah, there's not that much to go off of. So I was really struggling to figure out the style that they would have in their cottage then, because I didn't have much reference even in their castle. I really wanted to include this bunk bed situation because my parents actually live in a very old home, and it has this bunk bed that is like in the living area where there's a dining room, and that inspired me to create that. So I really tried to draw some inspiration also from real life and what I know and I'm familiar with. And a lot of the interiors and architecture, especially in the north, is very similar in Finland and all the other Nordic countries. But seriously, it was a big struggle to figure out how to furnish this place. So what I ended up doing was looking at a bunch of pictures from the World of Frozen that opened in Disneyland Paris just a few days ago. That actually helped me a lot with building this because I could get some closer details of areas and places that you wouldn't see in the movies. So for example, the shops have very different styles to the castle. I took some inspiration from the restaurant there. I took some inspiration also from the meeting area where you can meet Elsa and Anna. So that ended up helping me a lot with this build, and I'm going there actually myself in 1 month-ish. So I'm really excited to see how it looks in person, and I probably will end up changing some stuff in this build afterwards because I always get so inspired by my trips to Disneyland. Another thing that really helped me with building this was actually thinking that this is my cottage instead of Anna and Elsa's or Kristoff's, because this ended up being very my style. This is something that I would love to live in, and because there wasn't so many references from the movies of like what I should have in their cottage, so I started thinking like what would I have in my cottage that was in Arendelle, for example. And I feel like this is a case of like when I come up with a story myself and I'm trying to tell a story in my build, it's much easier to decorate it based on a person that I'm imagining living there. But when it's an already made movie with like lore and all these details that you can see in movies or like, for example, comics or anything like that, it's much more difficult to actually decorate an area when you know their personality and you can see this style already in the movie, but it doesn't quite translate into the game. So that makes it more difficult. So in this case, I definitely would say that it was easier to build this for myself rather than a person that I'm imagining. I just wanted to mention that since quite often I keep saying that it's much easier to build based on like your own story and like imagining a person living there, like who would be living there, what would they like, what would they have in their home. But for me, it was much more difficult now because I was so stuck on the details that I could see in the movies. But yeah, I wanted to also mention something in terms of the future of this build because I want this to be sort of like a forever build for me. And I feel like this project will keep going as long as I have inspiration that kind of fits this home. I will be adding a bunch of different rooms inspired by other movies and things from Disney and Pixar. But of course, this does not mean I'm only going to be building Disney themed things. It's not something that I want to do. I want to use my hoard home for room builds. So it's smaller builds that I can make more of and more often. and they're inspired by other things. But this build still has a long way to go. I still need to add some details. So I just thought that in the end I would include some little clips of my favorite areas like this painting corner, because I do love art. I love the living room so much. I love the little window in the ceiling, the fireplace being custom made. I love that. I made sure to include 3 of everything, so it looks like, there's Anna, Elsa, and Kristoff. But I think I will be talking more about the build and my thought process behind all of the things in the speed build, which will be coming this coming weekend. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tour, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy building!